It's great to have you on NephTalk, Rochelle.
Hi, thanks for having me, Chris.
I am looking at a wonderful picture of you and your dad, Roy. You are both in matching Stanford hospital gowns, sitting on a bed, your arm around Dad, and you both look very radiant and happy. What is going on in this picture for the benefit of our audience?
There was a mix of excitement, worry, nervousness, but mostly excited. We're going to be doing a life-changing moment in both of our lives. My dad, again, will be giving me the gift of life. So you can't ask for more. Just being on dialysis for about 8 months and then getting to this moment is just a great milestone to achieve.
So part of your dad will be part of you.
Again.
Again, indeed. But your health journey to a transplant started on July 24th, 2014, with an eye exam to discuss vision changes. But that event ended up in the emergency room as you crashed into dialysis with kidneys that were failing. A chest catheter was placed for dialysis access, and as you said, the week-long hospital stay was the beginning of the lowest part of my life. I left the hospital with a new lifestyle. Tell us about that.
With the lifestyle that I had before, juggling school, work, and a social life, it was just a lot to take in that I had a chronic illness. To be told that I have to go on dialysis was just very overwhelming.
In fact, you asked the question, I guess to the doctors, am I going to die?
I was given the options of going on dialysis because the only other option is a transplant. And unfortunately, there's no cure for kidney disease. Taking on dialysis wasn't anything new for my family, unfortunately. My grandpa had the disease. Well, I did get to meet him, but didn't really get to know him. A lot of the dialysis stories never really came up, and information about kidney disease never came up. Maybe because it was a sensitive subject for my family to talk about because my grandfather was no longer around. When I was diagnosed, it was just something totally new to me. I actually had less than 15% of kidney functions. That's stage 5. And at that point, you have to go on dialysis.
You mentioned to me earlier that you heard from a member of the family that your grandpa has to be hooked up to a machine, but apparently your knowledge about dialysis really didn't go beyond that.
That's as far as my knowledge went about my grandpa's health condition. I later did find out that he was doing home hemo. My grandma was actually his caretaker, so she was like a nurse for him. Just so many details that I've learned after my diagnosis.
Your father stepped up and volunteered to donate a kidney. It wasn't quite that simple, as he needed to qualify to become a donor, and that's complicated in and of itself, and make some lifestyle changes, for example, losing weight and not smoking. What did that mean to you that he was willing to not only give you one of his kidneys, but to adjust lifestyle?
My dad is a very well-determined person. That was no challenge for him if he knew that that was my only other option. So he put 2 and 2 together and just wanted to be there just as my father because what are fathers there for?
If my daughter said, Dad, I need a kidney, especially after my experience doing NephTalk for satellite healthcare, I would say, well, let's get the testing done. Let's find out if I'm an appropriate donor, and we'll make this happen. This experience interviewing people who have received kidneys from living donors has really changed my life too.
I also like to add that for him wanting to donate to me, it was a very telling moment because and I never knew about this, but when my grandfather needed a kidney, he wanted to be his donor, but my grandfather denied it.
Really?
And this message is very chilling to me. And every time I say it, it's crazy. But my grandpa told my dad, no, well, not in these exact words, but He basically said, no, you should save that because you never know. Maybe one of your kids will need your kidney.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that would keep you up at night.
I guess it was meant to be that he saved his kidney.
It was meant to be.
Yeah, it's weird how
Wow.
certain things work out.
Your family has been very supportive and helped you with the dozens, maybe hundreds of decisions that needed to be made after your diagnosis at Stanford. In fact, they recommended that you consider the satellite healthcare dialysis center that your late grandfather visited. How was your experience over there? What was that like?
The early stages of me starting dialysis was very frightening. Of course, it was a new lifestyle that I needed to take on, and I was a part of this community, the kidney community. But the more and more I went, the more and more I learned how to be proactive with my health, and the more it became a routine. I was able to weave in school because I needed to find a way to make school work with my dialysis days and my treatments. Every day I just wanted to make it better, make it easier. But traveling was a bit of a challenge just because this treatment option that I did was done in center.
I'm looking at a picture of your feet, a photograph that you took while you were sitting in the dialysis chair. And in fact, you were probably doing your homework during your dialysis session, and eventually you graduated from college with a bachelor's degree in marketing. And now, congratulations, you are the marketing communications coordinator for satellite healthcare. That's been quite a journey, but you got a lot of homework done sitting in that chair 3 times a week for 3 to 4 hours a day.
Oh, yes. Netflix also helps too. I just figured I'm going to be stuck 3 hours a day, 9 hours a week. It only made sense. I had no excuse not to do schoolwork, and I did online classes. So literally, school was able to be done, and I didn't want to quit school.
Over a period of 8 months, you had approximately 100 dialysis sessions, yet you told me that really weren't enough of a dialysis patient because you really weren't at it for very long, that you felt in many respects that there were other folks, especially people who've been on dialysis for years, who were better qualified. Were you feeling sort of not really a member of the club?
The denial in my whole grieving stage of finding out my diagnosis was well, it lasted for a pretty long portion of my dialysis days. I always thought, I hate this diet. There's so many things that I can't eat. If I just thought outside of the box, there's so many other options and like great tips that now I learned. And if I should ever go back on dialysis, knock on wood, but I'd be more knowledgeable about all of the diet situations. I also felt for the other patients too because they sometimes the longer they were on, blood vessels didn't work as well or they would give out, so they'd have multiple operations. And although I feel very lucky, but I also never got to experience that and to really understand the pain that some of these folks had to go through. I have to keep positive because I'm thinking without dialysis, I wouldn't be here today.
There's something called survivor guilt. I don't know if it applies to you, but people who frequently experience traumatic events wonder, speculate, muse why they were spared, why they were saved. Did that ever occur to you that why me?
Oh yeah, that comes up a lot. There's every now and then sometimes I take it for granted all of the things that I had before. Like showers, for instance. For 8 months, I didn't shower like normal people would shower. I'd have to shower with like a bucket and like be very careful because I had a chest catheter for all those 8 months. And if anything should happen and I get an infection, it could be deathly. And then just not being on dialysis for that long and being lucky to get a transplant so soon when I know that the waiting list for a transplant is pretty long. And of course, it depends on which state you're in. And to get it so fast and to actually have a donor too, because that's a big struggle in itself. I'm very grateful, but yes, I do feel the guilt sometimes.
Has your relationship with your family changed since this experience? Because they were extraordinarily helpful in terms of easing your burden with all the decisions that had to be made as a dialysis patient and, of course, later on as a transplant patient.
They're very helpful, and I'm very grateful for them for stepping up and helping me make decisions because when I was diagnosed, all of this was just way too overwhelming for me to absorb, that my mind wasn't in the right place to make decisions. So I'm very glad that, um, like, picking my dialysis center, that was like a no-brainer to them since I still live in the area.
Yeah, let's go to Grandpa's center.
Yes, exactly. So that was already taken care of. And of course, medical bills came up, and my parents helped me with some of my financial stuff. So, me being such an independent person and letting other people take the wheel for me was a little weird and put some of the responsibilities in their hands. But once I got the hang of things and the routine became part where I felt like I was trying to perfect it every time, that's when I was able to get back on my feet and then be my independent self, with, of course, the help of my boyfriend, still to this day.
I'm so glad you mentioned your boyfriend.
Yes, his name's JD, and he's the most amazing person anyone can have. He didn't have to be by my side, and we were in such an early part of our relationship. It was a little over a year and a half. So for him to see me in that state, normally people like relationships probably don't see that until like they're married or later on in life.
How did JD do, and how did your epic hospitalization and subsequent dialysis and now your transplant touch or change your relationship?
There were some rough patches in the beginning because I was in that emotional state of depression, and I had a lot of like self-esteem issues, but he was there by my side, reassuring me, always making me feel better, and just being that support for me was very helpful. And I felt like it made us stronger. And now we've been together for 8 years. I have some pictures.
I bet you do.
We have a lot of photos, and he was there with me during my dialysis treatment.
Hmm.
We'd be doing homework together. He was there for like most of the time, so the staff is very familiar with him.
It does take a lot of patience, doesn't it, to listen to folks and to try to understand the anxiousness, the pain, the confusion that they might be feeling, especially if they are new to dialysis or contemplating a transplant.
It's like grieving. Everybody grieves in a different way. So, what worked for me and how I approach things may not work for others. I feel like it's very necessary to talk it out and have that support system, whether it be a professional counselor or a family member, some friends, because that's just a lot to take in just for one person, just to hold all of that emotion in. Because I don't think anybody likes dialysis, but they have to learn to live with it. And why not make it something that's likable and take a more positive approach on it?
While you were having dialysis, did you have an opportunity to speak to a social worker at the center or any other member of the interdisciplinary team for advice and insights into how to be perhaps a better patient, a more knowledgeable patient?
I spoke to almost everyone, and they're very helpful in providing information in their own way, in their own area of expertise. The social worker was really great. She helped me with a lot of my health insurance issues and a lot of stuff that caused a lot of stress. There's a large portion of the financial side to this, to like live through the new lifestyle. She would ask about my personal life and kind of comfort me. The center manager there, Sharon Cox, she was amazing. She always asked about my personal life too, and she kind of shared some tips on what other patients that she's seen that have done things that helped out with any struggles that I was going through. The staff members always trying to lighten things up.
You said, luckily, the staff at Satellite were very warm and inviting to my boyfriend and me making dialysis not so bad. The presence of an individual on the staff, I imagine, is very, very reassuring, especially when people know you and your boyfriend, JD,
Yes.
by their first name and are sincerely concerned about your health and welfare.
They did a really great job at making me feel like a person and not just a sickly, frail person that I was. After I got sick, did my family come up with like details about my grandpa and during his dialysis days? But there were, I think, maybe one or two other people that were still around while my grandpa was on dialysis.
Oh, there were people who knew your grandfather.
Oh, yes, it was great. I'm just like, tell me more. For them to bring out details about my grandpa that I've never told any of the staff members before was just amazing. I just know from stories from what my family told me. Like, my grandpa had a limp, and they brought that up, and you remember that. And it sounded like my grandpa was a really likable person because he became friends with some of the staff members outside of dialysis because there was a moment where I think he had a kidney transplant, so he still kept in touch with the staff members, which is really great. Knowing that, I knew I was in good hands when I was going to dialyze at Satellite.
You've had a very, very interesting journey. Here we are. What is it, 6 years later?
Yes.
And you're working for Satellite Healthcare as a marketing communications coordinator. Do you ever think that that's a little strange or bizarre that suddenly you would graduate from a center to corporate?
To be honest, before I got sick, I never wanted to be in healthcare because I didn't know much about the early signs and what to look for or what signs that could lead to something serious. If I would have known that, then I probably would have avoided or probably not have gotten to the point where I was diagnosed with kidney disease at stage 5. So at that point, I thought, well, I'm going into marketing. It would be nice to try and help create some awareness. And I think working in marketing for a dialysis company is just great. So if there's any way to help people live a better life and to know the earlier signs, it would be helpful. It would just make everything worth it.
Education is the key, one of the main keys to health. I'm very, very glad you not only discovered that, but also that you're practicing it at Satellite Healthcare. Congratulations.
Thank you, but it's a team effort and I'm still learning along the way.
Thank you, Rochelle. Thanks for joining us today on NephTalk.
Thank you for having me.